This is update for February 12, 2024, day 719 of the war and of the date update. Also catch up for February 11 and 10. As always, I'm going to start with general strategic updates, and then I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield. So first, I just want to provide update on the aftermath of the firing of the head of Ukrainian military, General Zaluzhny. So I mentioned that there's going to be a purge of all people associated with him at the higher level of Ukrainian command. So their sort of final number is, I believe, 16 or 17 generals in the general staff group, like basically highest command, were fired along with him. As I mentioned, the new are replacements, and they are tightly connected to General Syrsky, who is now head of Ukrainian military. Now I'm going to switch to the second topic, is financial support for Ukraine from the US. So you're probably aware there is a new bill going through the US Parliament to fund Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. So basically, it's a 3-in-1 type of package. The law that would block immigration to the US is sort of separate, not included in this, and so that's where actually the problem is. That this law probably is unlikely to pass through the US Parliament. Right now, it looks like it's going to pass through the upper chamber, Senate, where there is a Democratic majority, plus there is enough of Republican senators who would support it. So there's 60 votes needed, and it seems that there is close to 70 votes. So it's probably going to pass. I would say not guarantee, but unless there is something strange happens, it's going to pass. The problem is, as it's always been, is in the lower chamber of the U.S. Parliament. That's where there's a problem. Not a problem, but that's where it's going to get stuck, most likely, because it's controlled by the Republicans, and those Republicans they're a lot less a lot more influenced by the basically by the popular sort of movements and by the let's say influence of Donald Trump. So and the re-election they're happening much more frequently. So they are much more connected to the voting support, and so they will be less likely to support a law providing financial aid to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan. And again, that's just one sort of angle of it, and the second is it's very clear that the Speaker of the lower chamber is adamant that he wants to first solve the problem with the border, and that comes first. So again, that law is not coming through. So this most likely will be sort of put off and is going to get stuck in the lower chamber of the U.S. Parliament. So this is just kind of like quick preview of what's probably going to happen. We'll see, but that's most likely scenario, I would say. Now I'm going to switch to the situation on the battlefield in Ukraine. So I'm actually going to discuss sort of more important topics once we get into the specific areas, and by that I mean Avdiyivka. But the general situation, there are more and more cracks appearing in Ukrainian defenses, which I mentioned before, and this situation will will get worse exponentially as time passes by for Ukraine, unfortunately. But let's just start with the review in a clockwise fashion, the way I always do. So first, the situation along the state border remains more or less stable. There's always hostilities, but there is no. When I say stable, I'm referring to large-scale Russian offensive or invasion with direction to either capture Kharkiv, which is here, which is major city, or actually attempting to capture capital Kyiv. So that's not imminent, not coming anytime soon, or at least there is no threat at this moment. I'm not saying anytime soon. That's actually probably over exaggeration. Now let's move to the situation along the North Luhansk front line. So things here are kind of like returning to back to where it used to be. So Russian army resumed its attack towards Kupiansk along this road. So they were sort of first probing attacks. Probably they're gonna ramp up their push there over time. So we'll see how it all goes. And then there's some activity in the southern part of this front line, attempting to basically get to the. Basically, the point is for the Russian army is to establish bridgehead on the other side of this stream, with a long-term goal is this town Liman, but so far they far away from there, and there are no meaningful advances by Russian troops here. Now let's look at the situation in the North Donbass front line. The northern sector back to sort of quiet and normal. Not clear what it was around this Bilohorivka. I mentioned this in a couple of videos. It's back to relatively quiet situation there. Now let's look at the southern sector of this front line. So this is where Russian pressure is the strongest, as you can see, straight west of Bakhmut, and then southwest of Bakhmut. There are some Russian advances. Basically, actually, it's a kind of like between these roads. As you can see, there are two roads. One goes to Chasiv Yar, the other one is sort of Konstantinivka, Bakhmut. These two roads, so they're basically advancing like north of this village Ivanivsky. There are some advances, probably I would say plus minus 800 meters, 1 kilometer. They managed to advance and kind of like build tiny salient here. The goal is obviously this town Chasiv Yar here. That's immediate goal for the Russian advances here. Now let's move to the situation on the central Donbass front line. This is where I'm gonna focus on Avdiyivka. Because it's, as I mentioned before, it's in a critical situation. I would say it's a hopeless situation for Ukraine at this point. And I just want to explain why it is so. So as you can see, even from the look of the front line, essentially the most logical and senseless strategy for Ukraine in giving the shape where Ukrainian army is and the command, sort of the path of least resistance, and I would say giving all of those constraints, the most effective strategy for Ukrainian army to actually withdraw from this salient, where actually this is Avdiyivka here, and this is actually this coke making plant here, where you see this huge dark spot. So basically retreat, use this plant as main stronghold and anchor of defense, and basically establish defense along this line, Severne and Lastochkyne. And this is the most sensible, reasonable solution for Ukrainian army at this point. And the reason I'm saying this is because Russian army is essentially got through the town, and basically there is, clear line of, visibility. This is fields here from one side to another. It's, 3 kilometers. So it's essentially resupplying through the fields Ukrainian troops here in actual Avdiyivka, the town itself, is going to be extremely costly. It's just simply not worth it. And that's a reason the most effective, or, well, not effective, but the most reasonable solution, and actually effective in terms of defending and spending resources, is to withdraw on this line that's including this coke making plant, Lastochkyne, Severne. That's the most logical. The rumors are actually that Ukrainian command, new Ukrainian command, which is effectively is a tool, is basically a transmission line for Ukrainian president, is gonna bring third brigade, which is Azov. Well, there are two Azovs. There is 12th brigade and there is 3rd brigade. 3rd brigade is in the Ukrainian army, and the 12th is the National Guard. So the actual true Azov is that one in National Guard, which is 12th brigade. The third one is sort of split off. That was then built into Azov in Ukrainian army, but that brigade is actually not really a brigade. It's actually a division. It's about 8,000 troops. So there are rumors, and I don't have confirmation on anything like that, that Ukrainian command is bringing this 3rd brigade Azov to stabilize this whole front line. So, kind of like no Ukrainian command, the most likely scenario how they're going to use it is basically to plug this hole, to prevent it from collapsing. Basically, stationing them around the salient and on both sides and everywhere here, basically putting them as a plug in a hole. That's a worst possible scenario for Ukrainian forces, because it will buy time probably for a month or two, but at the cost of destroying the most motivated, the best unit Ukrainian army probably has at this point. And it's being just refreshed, so it's in the best shape, it's in good shape and everything. And the problem is that, getting new replacement, the same sort of level of motivation, everything is going to be nearly impossible. So basically, it's expanded and it's never going to be the same. New iteration is going to be much worse. And so this is probably coming from Ukrainian president, this idea, because he actually reminds me more and more sort of Hitler approach, where he doesn't want, he's becoming extremely rigid and doesn't understand flexible defense, doesn't understand that sometimes you need to leave the territory to continue the fight, and he wants to sort of clinch to every single centimeter, which costs extraordinarily and actually makes things worse in the long term. And that's actually a hallmark of the Ukrainian president. It's extremely short-term thinking, inability to think long-term, and that's actually where all of the problems actually stemming from in Ukraine in general. And so, again, that's probably his command to hold on. He's obviously totally slave of PR, so he doesn't want Avdiyivka to be announced that it's lost by Ukrainian forces on the international scene. And so the decision is, okay, let's expand most valuable resource, or one of the most valuable resources, just to kind of paint the picture for another month or two. And that's just unfortunate reality of Ukraine as a system. And that's why I mentioned this many times before, that the Ukrainian president is the biggest danger for Ukraine to survive as a country. The proper actually solution to this problem, as I mentioned before, would be counterattack on the Russian flanks. Could be, there's many sort of thousand ways to cut sort of this Russian troops here, but you can do it from the north, you can even do it from Stepove here in this direction. you're going to even do it from here, from Nevelsk, towards north. So there's many ways to do it. You can do simultaneously many things. But first of all, 8,000 troops is simply not enough to execute on that. Second, as I mentioned before, Ukrainian troops, and this is actually true for Russian. There's no difference between Ukrainian and Russian troops in this respect. It's both, as I said, these are the same Soviet armies. But the fundamental flaw is they are not trained to do offensive operations. What they trained is just like mindlessly do this squeezes, right, to attack the enemy instead of actually moving forward. So this is not in mentality of the soldiers. That's not how they trained, and most people, they just do what they told. They don't have that critical thinking that is necessary in this situation. So they are not trained to do this. Ukrainian command is also not capable of thinking that way. So basically you have problem at two levels, at the actual executional level, which is troops on the ground, and sort of your brain level, which is, again, not there either. So that's why I said that Ukrainian troops are not capable of doing actual offensive operations, and so that would be the best solution actually in this situation. But given this limitation, that's why I mentioned that the only viable option is to basically retreat to this line of the Skokin plant, Lastochkyne, Severne, and sort of continue defenses that way. That's the only sensible solution for this. And again, as I said before, given that Ukrainian command is bringing this third brigade, there is no rumors of other troops bringing. So again, this is confirms that fear that this is going to be used just to plug the hole instead of actually doing proper things. And unfortunately, this is kind of like a hallmark or microcosm of the problems with Ukrainian command, and mostly with Ukrainian political top that's just simply inadequate for the situation that Ukraine is in. Now I'm just going to look at the bigger picture. So this is obviously Avdiyivka. This is what we've seen. Then if we move south, Marinka area, Novomykhailivka. So Russian troops continuing advancing west of Marinka. There's village next to it called Georgievka. They basically started to they're getting to outskirts of Georgievka. So basically advance continuing. Similar situation is happening around Novomykhailivka. So the eastern part of the village, it's actually a small town, was captured by Russian troops. And again, the situation, it looks more and more that Novomykhailivka is going to be lost in, I don't know, months or two, sometime like that. Could be actually faster. Again, all of this moves by the Russian army, they are not also anything intelligent. This is again the same primitive squeezes, and even this attacks around Avdiyivka, still primitive squeezes. The only sort of intelligence is this sort of pincer movement from the north and sort of from the south. That's only part of the intelligence on the Russian command. The rest, it's the same Soviet army. Everything that I said about Ukrainian army equally applies to the Russian army. So the summary is that Ukrainian defense is slowly but surely is collapsing here west of Donetsk, and this potentially can open up floodgate for Russian troops, giving, as I mentioned before, low morale, low motivation of the troops, where people are simply not willing to go and die for the system that's not working for them generally. So that's the whole, the kernel of the whole problem that Ukraine faces, and that's why Ukrainian political top is a problem. That's essentially ensuring that there will be more problems for Ukraine. Now let's move to the next section of the front line, Zaporizhya front line. Things here are more or less quiet, which probably indicates that Russian command does not have enough resources to continue operations in many sectors or on many front lines. So what by that I mean that they probably don't have enough shells, don't have basically resources of everything. This again highlights that Russian army is not in great shape either. It's not like how it used to be in the summer of 2022, where they were shelling everything at will. There was much more equipment and everything. Russian army is becoming resource poor as well. It's slowly but surely sinking, along with the Ukrainian army. But as I mentioned before, this is normal course of the war. Things are getting worse and worse and worse over time. They never get better. They never get to the beginning point of the war. Now let's look at the situation along the Dnipro River. Things remain the same. Some weak Russian attacks against this bridgehead in Krinky, which giving the whole situation in the central Donbass front line, it makes less and less sense unless there is resources, there is desire to actually do offensive here, and actually that can collapse the whole plan of Russian command. But again, there's no skill level, there's no skills at the troop level, and there is no skills at the command level. So that's what prevents that from happening. And giving all of that, then this bridgehead becoming losing its strategic importance, giving the rest of the situation. That's all for the day. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Bye bye.